Happy holidays, everybody. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, and I am doing my first of our 5 holiday review specials here for the Wrestling Inc. Daily. We thought it would be a great idea, or I guess I thought it would be a great idea, to ask all of my co-hosts and my boss, Raj Giri, to all pick a classic pay-per-view or event for me to watch as like a gift to me, and then we would talk about it for an hour or so here as part of our holiday special lineup. This is a very fun idea. I don't go back and watch a lot of classic pay-per-views. I may have bit off more than I could chew because now I have to watch 5 in like a week in order to pull this off, but I think it's going to be okay. And with that, the man who picked the first of the reviews we're going to be doing here on December 22nd, our friend from Mondays on the Daily, it's Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome to this Wrestling Inc. Daily holiday special.
A lot of pressure on my shoulders here. We're going first. This pay-per-view sets the tone. Dude, I mean, I'm just saying, Survivor Series 1998, what we're going to get into today, I think it is one of the most pivotal pay-per-views of the Attitude Era that nobody ever talks about. So Nick, let me ask you a question. When did your wrestling fandom start?
Oh, man, my fandom was like early, mid-90s WWF. So like the launch of Raw is probably very close to when I became a wrestling fan.
So the championship win by Diesel is what really got you into this, right? No, yeah. Diesel and Razor Ramon too. Those were the guys that really brought you into the
Diesel, Razor Ramon. I was a big fan of Duke the Dumpster Drosy for whatever reason when I was getting into wrestling. You know, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels became like my guy because, you know, he was a Texan. I was a Texas kid. And he's Shawn Michaels. How's it, you know, hard not to like Shawn.
Sure.
Especially then. So, yeah, what about you? When did your fandom start, Michael?
My very first wrestling rivalry that I remember, because I actually got picked up with WWE Superstars or WWF Superstars that came on Saturday mornings on USA. They're little, I don't even know if they still do it, but they're hour-long recap show that this is what happened on Raw this week, right? When it was only really Raw. And they would go through all the big feuds and the big promos from that week and give you the results. And I was flipping through the channels, probably 97, early 97, and just caught it one day. The first real big feud that hooked me, that got me into wrestling hardcore, was Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart.
Okay, that's a one to grab you. You know, very physical, very compelling characters. I will say I also remember I used to watch TBS, the WCW show, and I remember Hulk Hogan bringing Macho Man over and stuff. So I don't know, like early mid 90s.
Sure.
You know,
and I think that I was never WCW though. Like I'd never watched WCW stuff around that. Like I knew it came on, but like didn't watch it, you know?
Oh, sure. Well, I watched WCW. I honestly, I think the Hogan tie-in honestly got me over to WCW. I don't recall watching like the TBS Saturday night stuff until like they had moved to the Disney lot. And I think the like brightness and the cleanness of it, it was just different. Who is this William Regal guy or Lord Steven Regal, whatever they were calling him?
Oh, we're going to get to him in a little bit. The working man, William Regal.
Well, I got a little insight into that one too. So wait, let's get to it here. This is our first review. This can be very casual. This isn't a watch along. It's just a chance for you to, you know, hear Michael and I's thoughts on this particular pay-per-view. Now, I did watch the whole show. I took detailed notes. I've got that. But before we even get to the show, Michael, you did, I know, a lot of research as to the context of this particular pay-per-view. So indulge us here before we get into it. Do you want to provide the context of this pay-per-view, what was going on before it and after?
I would love to. Yeah. I would love to, man. This is why I picked this one, because it's an oddball one to pick. In the Attitude Era, people gravitate towards WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 15, Royal Rumble 98, 99. And I wanted to pick something. This one, number one, I picked this one because I love the theme song. Jim Johnston, freaking genius with this Deadly Games theme song.
It's a slam banger, 100%. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, just put this on replay, put it on. If I had an entrance theme song, this would be it for me, right? But this one hit at about the right time. We're a year out from, or a year after, I should say, the Montreal Screwjob. If you know your wrestling history, you know your Attitude Era history, everybody talks about 1999 stuff all the time, right? Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, all the stuff that happened with the championship picture, Mick Foley, The Rock. Attitude Era kicks off 1997. Everybody knows the Montreal Screwjob and the Mr. McMahon character that came out of that. Sure. I think this pay-per-view in 1998, a year after the Montreal Screwjob, is really the precipice of the Attitude Era kind of figuring out what it is. And then through 99, the biggest year in the business in 2000, the Attitude Era running on all cylinders, right? And so you go back in time, Stone Cold Steve Austin 1998, wins the Royal Rumble. 1998, becomes WWF champion for the first time.
Okay.
And that entire year is all about Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, right? I mean, it started with Mike Tyson, but they're just going back and forth all year long. Austin is the centerpiece of WWF throughout 98. He feuds with Mick Foley. He feuds with The Undertaker. He feuds with Kane. He feuds with The Undertaker and Kane, right? And there is this ongoing story of Vince McMahon trying to undermine him. But here's the thing about it, right? It's not the full-on Vince McMahon character that we come to know in 99 and 2000, the no chance in hell Vince McMahon, the corporate Vince McMahon. Yes, he's got the Stooges, right? And so what I love about this is, up to this point, Austin has mostly been a champion. He lost it in the summer, 98, King of the Ring, July, he loses it to Kane, right? And then he wins it back again. But he has mostly been the ongoing champion this entire year in 1998, the Attitude Era. And then we come to the 2 months out from this. What sets this pay-per-view up is Austin's refusal to do McMahon's bidding, Austin's refusal to crown a new champion, right? So McMahon stacks the odds against him 2 months out from this pay-per-view. He puts him in a triple threat match. Kane, Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, right?
I remember.
But you remember this? And then Stone Cold Steve Austin he can pin either one, but Kane and Undertaker, they can only pin Austin to win. So there's the double pin. But during that same card, we have this great triple threat match with Mick Foley, with Ken Shamrock, who people forget was a huge component of the Attitude Era in this time, and The Rock, a steel cage match, winner becomes number one contender. So the undercard is bubbling late summer, right? You come out of SummerSlam, you got these guys under the undercard simmering right here, trying to figure out who is the next one in line, right?
Sure.
And so Austin takes the pin in the main event that night, but both Kane and Undertaker are crowned double winners. So there's no champion, but McMahon gets what he wants, right? Here's why this is key. This is the first time 2 months out from this pay-per-view that we have seen Austin not carrying the gold. He lost it during the summer, but he gained it back the next night on Raw, right? So retains it at SummerSlam, comes out of, I think it was Unforgiven, that he loses this. We have no champion. They're going to figure this whole thing out the next month at the pay-per-view. Kane Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin is the referee, right? He's got to declare a winner. And that same, if he doesn't, right, Vince McMahon wants him to be humbled. Stone Cold Steve Austin he's got to count for one or the other. Well, he does a double count out, declares himself the winner.
There you go. As you do. Right.
And this is the night. That's right. Like if I was the champion, if I was the working man's champion, right? Why would I not do that?
Sure.
So I believe, and I need to do my due diligence on this sometime after this, run an article about it. But that night, I believe that is the first time that we hear Vince McMahon utter the words, "You're fired," in that capacity.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that these are all iconic moments here. Yeah, man, you're talking.
Yes.
Yeah, the first time Steve Austin wins the WWE Championship or WWF Championship, the first year fired. I thought it was very interesting too on this show. The corporation kind of like starting to grow and take form here. This was not the flushed out corporation that we would see here in just a couple months, or we were still several months away from the corporate ministry. Like
that's right.
And, complete whatever that was.
Well, and this is what's so cool. You mentioned those iconic moments. The 2 months up to this pay-per-view, you know what segments we get on Raw? We get the Zamboni cart. We get the Stone Cold Steve Austin filling Vince McMahon's Camaro, or Corvette, I should say, with cement, right? We get the segment where Stone Cold Steve Austin, the night after he's fired at Judgment Day that I just mentioned about, he comes out and he hunts McMahon all night and holds the gun up to his head. We get all of these iconic moments. We get Shane McMahon coming into his own as a character, not just, all these things happen within a span of about 2 or 3 months. So I mentioned this pay-per-view, of course, the setup here being that now there is chaos around the championship. Who should be the champion? We're going to have this tournament. Austin's been fired. Shane hires him back. There's all these moving pieces leading up to this. Yeah. But the real thing for me is we are growing out of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon for the first year of the Attitude Era and into something much broader that will take us through the next 2 years of WWE programming. And we're going to get to that here on the show.
Man, okay. And yeah, I went back and I read the Observer from the week after this. I should preface, this was like at the high, we are getting to the hottest part of pro wrestling, as you mentioned there in 99. This show was a sellout. They had done, I think they did 5.6 million viewers the next night on Raw following this particular pay-per-view. There was a good hook. We'll get to that too. But at the same time, Meltzer at least he was reporting, and we'll get into some. There's at least one Meltzer article I directly cite here that we're gonna have in the run sheet. But like the way he's talking about the WCW product at this point, it seems like the NWO has been hot for about a year or so, right? Maybe almost two, like a year and a half, two at this point. And the wheels are starting to come off a bit, right? The product over at WCW is becoming a little bit more erratic, right? They're losing a little bit of focus. And so I do think under the context of what you said historically about how this was really kind of setting the stage for what we would get here right after that, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is WWE lining everything up so that they can finally have a product here that's not just going to be, 1 week to 2 weeks. They set up a lot of things here that are going to give them many different storylines to play into in the coming months after this pay-per-view, right?
100%, man. And even the way, I will say this, right? We're talking about booking here and what's happening in the storyline wise. Attitude Era Wrestling, not always the greatest thing to happen.
Sure.
But what they're doing with their storytelling, right? We have a whole lot of run-ins. We have a ton of false finishes. The two pay-per-views prior where there was the double pin on Austin and then the double count out. We don't have a champion. All of those kind of things would become staples in the Attitude Era. And we see them happening all throughout here in new ways. The heel turns, the face turns, all of those things. It really feels like Vince McMahon, Vince Russo, and the entire booking committee are thinking, hey, what's going to work for us? You mentioned hooks. Yeah. Every show, I watched the Raws heading up to this. Every Raw had a hook to end the show on. The pay-per-views had a hook. It was just a time full of them really knowing what their storytelling components would be in the coming years. And also, Nick, before we jump into this show, I can't say enough about how good the commentary team was during this time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's dive into it here. I'll set a little context. That's at the top of my run sheet here. So we'll dive into the actual enough bloviating. Let's get to the meat of it, So November 15th, 1998, the Kiel Center in St. Louis, Missouri, the commentators, like you just put over, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. And, it's easy to look back at Jerry Lawler as the puppies guy who he really wasn't 100% quite yet there with the character here. Just a good tandem here, and Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross calling the show. I agree with you, man. They were on point. There's gonna be several moments that I bring up here in the matches where I feel like they really layered on a lot of emotion, and in circumstances I don't know that we would get today. You know what I mean?
Today, it feels a lot more like we are kind of getting that video game commentary where people, what a maneuver, or, kind of making it feel bigger. But what these guys did was layer in the context. They would tell you when quiet moments in a match would happen, they would say, oh, this is what they're doing. They're setting this up. They're doing, and it would tell you that story as a viewer. So it didn't just feel like filler. It would feel like, oh, okay, give some. And Jerry Lawler, he was so good in this era, before puppies, before all that stuff. We get there, right? But he was so good at just being that, like, gets under your skin, right? Like, well, yeah, but Mr. McMahon feels this way about it. And he would make good points. And you're like, well, shit, that's just on their game. And you remember how much great, authentic commentary adds to a show like this.
Well, of course, this set, the set for the show featured the iconic flaming skull or cracked. I mean, it's the skull with the flames on either side of it, the red eyes. Didn't they do like a WrestleMania party like 6 months later where they brought the skull back out and they had Marvin Gaye sing Chocolate Salty Balls, the South Park song? I think that's right. I feel like that's right. I think we saw the skull one more time.
Okay. It's a great skull. It's a fantastic logo.
Fantastic skull, right? How is this thing not used more often? I would be shocked if after this review we don't get an NXT Deadly Games takeover here in the not too distant future. They got that thing out in the warehouse. You don't even need to make it. You don't even need to negotiate with Cody Rhodes to use that skull. You can just use that one anytime you want.
I just wonder. I always wonder when I watch this show. Like, this is a very different kind of Survivor Series. This is a tournament style. This is not a Survivor Series, classic Survivor Series matchup style. But this whole thing is called Deadly Games, and I can imagine Vince McMahon sitting in the back, brainstorming with Bruce Pritchard and everybody going, I just want to call it the Deadly Games. Like, you can just see him layering that on.
Well, but that's the thing is like, like Extreme Rules, the horror show, right? Like that became a thing there, like Money in the Bank, climb the corporate ladder. Like this is wrestling is cyclical, right? Sure. Every so often Vince decides we need taglines.
That's right. Well, and you think about wrestling show names did come from taglines. Like, you have the Big Four originally, but everything was in your house, Judgment Day. They were all in, like, in your house was a brand where other pay-per-views came out of it. But yeah, Vince McMahon, he loves him a good tagline.
Well, that's the thing is it's like sometimes managers are in vogue, sometimes they're not, right? Sometimes he's on the hook for tag team wrestling, sometimes he's not. right now we're in the mood for taglines, and this was definitely a predecessor of the great ones we're getting today. Anyway, also I had to note before we even get to the first match and segment here, the Nestle Crunch airship was shown fly. Now, not a blimp. It was made very clear several times throughout the night by commentators that this was the Nestle Crunch air blimp, which kind of looked like a giant floating turd throughout the building, like just this brown thing, like a toilet, like floated along the toilet bowl, you know? Anyway.
So well, but this is what, again, early WWE figuring out who they wanted to be in the future, and corporate sponsorships, definitely who they are now, and a big part of, Wall Street Company, all that jazz. But you hear the announcer say it, we're really proud of our partnership with Nestle, and it's just cool to see that. Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't make a Nestle crunched his bones reference or something on commentary. And and I know that we, I guess we're not really under the gun here other than the fact I have more work to do. But the airship, I've heard, I think I actually maybe talked to, was it Bischoff did this in WCW or something? I talked to somebody about the blimp because I've always been very interested in the blimp or the use of blimps. And I think that at some point I was told that the reason that the blimps didn't get used more was because they blocked the view of people up top.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I think that you could use it still, not all throughout the show, because I go to Bulls games and stuff, and they have blimps that drop souvenir shirts and stuff, automatic, nice I should say airships, not blimps, airships. Well, so anyway,
but also blimps, maybe block the view, but they move around. And everybody during this era brought a sign to the damn TV show. That's what blocked your view.
Can I talk real quick about the signs and the fans too before we get, I know I'm kicking the can here on the actual review, but I'm watching all these fans so engaged with their posters, so engaged with dressing up and things. Sure. I think that social media has, I think we will never see that kind of energy again, because why would you go through the money and time of buying a poster, drawing a poster, when you could just put out a tweet now? Right? A lot of that stuff that was posters were people trying to express themselves on a large platform hoping to be seen. Sure sounds a lot like Twitter. And I think that is I think the same thing with people had to work harder. God damn it, I feel like an old man. People had to work harder to express their creativity at this time, and that's why you got that kind of reaction.
Well, and exposure was much more, I think it's a great observation, right? Because exposure now is, I send out a tweet and it gets retweeted however many times, it goes viral, whatever. Back then, if you got on TV during a pay-per-view or during Raw, that was something you told everybody about on the school bus. You told it about, employers, whatever it was, because you just had so much fewer chances for exposure back then.
Yeah, dude, you wanted to be that fan that went viral, right? Yep. Everybody wanted to be that, whatever that Bret Hart kid was, the young kid that was a nerd or whatever. So
yeah.
We
had Kane dressed up. I mean, cosplay was evident back during this era. We had Kane at ringside. So I do appreciate looking back that some of the fans, but also the fan reactions. I watch these shows and I think about how organic all of that felt. And I think about where WWE is, of course, before COVID, but today. And there's something missing whenever the fans, you would see the fans literally rush from their seats to ringside when certain things would happen. You just don't get that anymore.
Well, and with the Austin 316 gimmick, right? I think if that had happened today, it would have been hashtag Austin 316. I don't know that you'd have seen 5,000 posters at the show all saying Austin 316. It's just a different mod. It's the same, but it's different.
We're old people now, Nick. Man, that's what it is, man. We're old men.
Cool. Love it. All right, let's go down memory lane here. So we're back at Survivor Series. Match number 1 featured hardcore champion Corporate Mankind. Well, here I'll preface this. So Vince comes out. He says before the match that he guarantees a new champion. He's accompanied by Big Bossman, who we will discuss several times here throughout the show. Commissioner Slaughter, not Sergeant Slaughter, Pat Patterson, and Gerald Briscoe. Now Mick comes out as Corporate Mankind. He's wearing this tuxedo. He's got the hardcore title. And then Vince introduces his opening round opponent, Duane Gill. Now, Duane Gill before that, Vince mocked him, saying Gilbert came from WCW in the Ted Turner voice, which I wanted to note. But he said Duane Gill was the coach for the Pasadena Chargers, which I'm guessing is some kind of team. Mick beat Duane in about a minute after double arm DDT.
He puts over Duane Gill too. He the build up to this is holy shit, we're getting somebody. He's an astounded athlete he spent some time in WCW. And for the record, Pasadena Chargers, I think they said on commentary, it was a elementary school football team he coached.
Wonderful. Well, anyway, Duane came in. He got DDT'd. Mick hit this beautiful floating, rolling cradle pin on. I was like, oh, be still my heart. This was a wonderful pin here from Mick on Duane. Liz was watching the show with me at this point, my girlfriend, and she was very confused about Duane Gill because of the idea that like he was built up as a big deal and they just kept calling him Duane Gill and screaming Duane Gill. She's like, who the hell is Duane Gill? It's very funny watching some of this stuff back when people have no idea what's going on. But anyway, I thought this was a good tone setter for the night. I enjoyed this opening bout.
Yeah, it tells you, it catches you up in the storyline, right? Mick Foley has been the handpicked champion. He is the guy that the corporation has put their trust in. Of course, he's the hardcore champion recently bestowed to Mick. So it lets you as a viewer catch up on, okay, and look, they gave him an easy opponent. You get the early stuff here with Duane Gill. He's scared by the fireworks. Of course, we're going to see him pop back up either later this year, early next year as Gilbert. But I just love all of this context setting. And God bless the corporation. McMahon in his wheelchair. This to me is Pat Patterson, Gerald Briscoe, Vince McMahon. That is the essence of who the corporation always will be in my mind. And I just love all the work those three men do together.
Then we went backstage. We saw a very young, everyone looks so young here. Kevin Kelly, he interviewed Sable, who's ice in her neck. She's upset because she was on Heat before the pay-per-view. She was doing an interview, and women's champion Jacqueline attacked her. And so now they're going to have a match here at Deadly Games later on in the night. Any thoughts here?
Sunday Night Heat used to matter. Like, do you remember this era where like that was like you had Shotgun Saturday Night at midnight every week, but then you had Sunday Night Heat and Monday Night Raw, man.
Yeah. So then we went into match number 2. Jeff Jarrett with Debra took on Al Snow with Head. So Al attacked Jeff with a swanton off the stairs pre-match. I was very impressed with Al Snow here in this match. At this time, Snow was the leader of the Job Squad. Then Liz, my girlfriend, showed me a photo of Jared Leto with his own head from the Met Gala in 2019 and started telling me how he stole Al Snow's gimmick, which is a rabbit hole worth going down. That's why I noted it in the notes here. Debra did steal Al's head at one point, which distracted the ref. Then Al went to get the guitar, at which point Jeff grabbed the head. Jeff went to level Al with the head. The ref grabbed the guitar, put it away. Al then grabbed the head. He laid out Jeff behind the ref's back, and bada boom, Al Snow picks up a victory over Jeff Jarrett here, and he's going to be going on to face Mick in the next round. I think of all the surprise wins, this has got, Al Snow, I think Al Snow beating Jeff Jarrett was rather of a surprise. Now, I guess at the time, though, like there was speculation that Jeff was like on his way out of the company as well. Right.
Sure. And this is Jeff Jarrett. God, like Jeff Jarrett was there, then he left and he came back. And this is 2 months into his new look. I think he had been shaved maybe back at SummerSlam during this period when he lost to X-Pac. We all associate Jeff Jarrett and Debra as being a thing, but this is very early in their tenure together. And so Jeff Jarrett was kind of still this, guy, but didn't have an identity like he would when he got his later on Intercontinental Championship runs. So Al Snow picking up the victory also surprised me. Also, the fact that they're both in a championship tournament surprises me. But I love that we get these elements, the guitar in here, Al Snow with Head, all of these things, good match, short, good, quick match, but kind of, again, telling you who these guys are going to be later on.
Well, that's the thing about this show. Like, as much as it did stuff to further the plots and, like, create stars, the matches on this show, by and large, are not, like, anything. There's not, there's a couple of good ones we'll get to here later on, but these are all just more to just kind of get them in to keep the tournament rolling along. And I very much got that vibe with the Jeff Jarrett Al Snow match.
This is not your wrestling classic match, even though you do have some like you say, slam bangers of matchups on this. Mankind and The Rock meeting early. We'll get to some other things here, but this is not the show you watch to get a wrestling classic done.
This is not New Japan Wrestle Kingdom, okay? That's not what you're getting. That's not what you're getting at Deadly Games, okay?
It's all story. Vince McMahon and the Stooges are on every card practically, every match, in the backstage giving their commentary, right?
Yes, they are. They're frequently thrown to.
Yes.
So then in the third match, Big Bossman, he took on Stone Cold Steve Austin. The two brawled outside the ring before the match. Austin sent Bossman into the steps. Now Vince is then shown backstage in his wheelchair watching, just like you described. So at one point, Bossman, so these are kind of just like random notes I take. It's not a blow by blow. I did note at one point while Bossman had Steve Austin like in a choke hold or like in a headlock, he then went to he just took his hands, he just like put them over Steve Austin's face as if he was just trying to smother and kill this man. And the ref was like, you can't, no. You can't do that. All right, Ray, don't do that. And so at any point, at one point, Austin then stopped Bossman in the corner. He gave him the finger. Why at this point? This is the first time I noticed there was blurring and beeping. They own this stuff. Why can't they just put a disclaimer at the top? And then is it because they already edited it? Like, why is this?
Yeah, I think like they even bleeped out asshole, where they bleep out the hole but not ass. So anyway, I just earned us a good rating on iTunes there. So I think it has something to do with the fact that at some point they did go through and censor out all of these things because I don't know, maybe those things aren't even allowed during a TV-14 broadcast anymore. But God, you had fans flipping each other off because Austin did it, right?
Yeah, dude.
And so it's weird. It's weird.
It was very odd. Bossman and Austin, they rolled outside where Bossman then grabbed his nightstick and he just started beating on Austin. Got a DQ. Vince was watching on backstage. He's like, oh, this is great. Oh, Bossman, he's taking out Steve Austin, right? He's like so happy that Bossman is allowing Steve Austin to continue via DQ as long as he gets beat down by this nightstick, which I'm honestly, why hasn't anyone brought the nightstick back? Nightstick is a great weapon. Right?
It is, but so like I was looking at this because we use weapons today in WWE, but it's always it's super safe, which I appreciate, right? But if you're watching on the video version, I'll demonstrate. We always grab the weapon and put our hand over the end of it and hit you with our fist. One of the things that really impressed me about Bossman throughout the show is, number one, he was a master with that nightstick. He would flip it over his shoulder, under his arm. He could just twirl it around his fingers like a magician.
Yeah.
But he went to hit Austin during this beatdown. Jerry Lawler or Jim Ross that hit him right in the heart, right? But he hit him more in like the shoulder area. And I don't see how that shot didn't hurt like hell when it literally hit Austin because it was unprotected, it looked like. And it just went straight into that collarbone, dude.
Yeah, well, I want to go get a nightstick now. I kind of just want one like to add back here. And if I had one right now, I'd be trying to fling it around and probably break a window. Anyway.
Are you going to cosplay as Big Bossman? Is that your new thing?
I I kind of have to do I choose old school Bossman or like SWAT Shield? That was another thought I had about Bossman. Man, he would have been great in the Shield.
Mm-hmm.
Is the veteran presence there? Ugh, Miss Ray.
This is my Bossman. Everybody knows the cop Bossman. That was a little bit before my era. This, all in his full-on get-up, Big Bossman is who I associate with this man, and he's fantastic in this role.
So then they go backstage to Michael Cole, who's interviewing Vince, and Michael Cole I don't want to make fun of a guy's weight, and I'm not making fun of him because he's beefy now. Because he's like he was getting tubby there for a while, then he got like a little more beefy. He's in good shape now. But he is rail thin here, man. Like this guy, get some meat on Michael Cole's bones, feed him a sandwich, Anyway.
I think I age myself based on how old Michael Cole is nowadays, how old Kevin Kelly is, like all these guys that I grew up watching, and I see these videos and I'm like, oh my God, they've aged this much. How much have I aged in that time? But yeah, Michael Cole, his skinny backstage presence, but it really worked whenever The Rock would pick on Michael Cole. It just played so well because of his appearance and the way they kind of look together. So
yeah. So and who's giving him facial hair advice is my other question from like somebody who doesn't like him would be my guess.
Kevin Kelly or Michael Cole or both of them?
Both. All right. Then we go to match number 4, X-Pac taking on Real Man's Man, William Regal. Regal came out. I had forgotten that this was his gimmick at this particular time, and I was not ready for this, Michael. So like Regal comes out and they start playing the Man's Man theme song, and I started excited, okay? And then Liz is on the couch, like, working, and she hears it. She's like, what is this song? And I'm like, this is Real Man's Man by William Regal. So she demands that I turn the song up so she can hear it, which is good and the correct instinct and why I love her for this song. So we're jamming out, listening to this, and Sean's in the ring, and she notices that Sean looks a lot like Jesus Christ at this moment, which he does. Very interesting combo here between Sean Waltman and Regal. And look, these guys are both workhorses. These are two guys that like are some of the best in the entire company at this point in time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Sean threw a back spinning heel kick on Regal in this match. You don't see kicks like that anymore.
No. And it's beautiful. Sean delivers it in a way that's just, oh my God.
So Jim Ross at this point catches me totally off guard, noting that Sean is someone who is red hot at 26 years old. This man has been the 1-2-3 kid, jumped to WCW, become 6-Pac, come back, joined DX, and is now in like a tournament for the WWE Championship at the age of 26. That would never happen. Nobody debuts on the main roster, I feel like, anymore unless they're like 26.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and we're going to get to some other guys in this card. I think The Rock at this time is 26. You look at how young these talent were. In fact, I actually looked it up last night. Mick Foley is one of the elder statesmen in this match, and he is 32 or 33 on this evening.
Man.
But all of these guys have such a huge upside. And, you know, we talk a lot about what happens in the Attitude Era with X-Pac and how he becomes Intercontinental Champion in that mid card. But it really did feel like on a night like this, he's filling in for Triple H. Triple H's storyline out. I don't remember if he's
Triple
actually
H,
out.
The Triple H, I think that that's not yet. That comes in a little bit, I think. With
Oh yeah. So, but he is basically kind of in this match. He has his own like he's part of DX, but he has his own entrance theme that's based off of the DX theme. That's it. It's badass, right? This guy, he does deliver on this, but he could have very easily been a world champion a year or two later from this had the booking been slightly different.
A little too small. And I don't want to say that derisively of Sean. I think he even said it himself. Is like,
sure.
I don't know how you put the title. I mean, Sean is like the top kind of mid-card guy. And I like Sean. Sean's a friend of mine. I would love to say he's a former world champion. But at this point, man, I'm looking at him and I'm like, yeah, I mean, great worker. I mean, he did this. I noted here, he went for the Bronco Buster at one point and Regal moved, but he was going for the Bronco Buster on the top rope. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he bumps over the top rope and flops to the ground. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. Why were you aiming that high? So, why did you hurt yourself? Anyway, match ends in a double count out after the two are brawling outside. Sean hitting this side suplex on Regal. Then Vince sends out Commissioner Slaughter to the ring, who kind of does this it's not really a run. It's more just like a jaunt. Anyway.
A light trot, we'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like equestrian, and anyway, Vince tells him he's going to institute a 5-minute sudden death overrun, which he relays to the timekeeper. But then Sean is in the aisle, unable to keep competing. So he just goes to the back. The two can't restart the match. Rather than award the win to Regal to advance, neither man advances. And Vince is, really upset about that, obviously.
Well, because the winner of this match has to face Stone Cold Steve Austin, and there's no way in hell we're gonna let Stone Cold Steve Austin get a second round bye.
I was so confused by this, and I did text Sean about it, and he got back to me. All he told me was that he wishes he could forget this match. He apparently did not like this match.
Is this a match? I mean, I think they play it up on TV like he was injured, but did he actually get injured during one of the spots with William Regal?
That's what I wish. If I'd have had some more time this morning and I wasn't doing a million things, I was going to get more info on this. You know what? Maybe I'll break it up by next Monday as a preface. Before
there you go.
This. But,
we just rewatched your star-making performance at Survivor Series 98.
News alert. Sean was not a huge fan of this match. But anyway, because I wonder, was the plan for Sean to come back in the ring, do the 5 minutes, and then it still goes to a non-finish, and that's how Steve Austin gets the bye? Because this made zero sense.
Sure.
Yeah,
but you know what's interesting? Everything is so produced in WWE TV nowadays, and back then you could do something like this with an awkward finish, and while it feels awkward to us today, it didn't feel quite as awkward in the moment. Because back then the cameras, the announcers, the commentary team, the story just followed the wrestlers and what happened. It didn't feel quite so produced. There wasn't always music that hit at the exact right time. I think sometimes things that happen now feel so staged. It takes away from the authentic nature of this, where you're like, wait, what is going to happen? Is he going to come back and fight? Is he going to walk back to the locker room? And as a viewer, you're more drawn into that world because you don't know what to expect.
I will say, yeah, you're right. There was confusion around it, but I didn't want, and again, I think as a kid, I think you're absolutely right. I probably watched this and was just like, sure, whatever, that makes sense. Adults, they seem to have it under control. But as an adult myself now, I watch this, I worry for Sean, and I think to myself, that makes no effing sense. And this is not the last time on the show that I will say to myself, this makes no effing sense. So anyway.
Well, keep in mind, Vince McMahon handpicked these pairings for this tournament. So somewhere he wrote down in the back, I would like X-Pac to fight this new guy on the scene in WWF, William Regal, the real man's man. I would like Al Snow to fight Jeff Jarrett for a championship shot.
Once I had to explain, because I think at some point Jim made a comment about how that's no way to welcome somebody from the UK to our country. And Liz was like, who's from the UK? And I'm like, William Regal. She's like, why is he like this?
Why is he so Mr. Americana? I'm a lumberjack cutting down trees, but also from
City. All right, so that brings us to match number 5, the final of the opening round matches here. Intercontinental Champion Ken Shamrock. No, this was not the final of the opening round matches. Apologize. Match number 5 featured Intercontinental Champion Ken Shamrock versus Goldust. I noted immediately, you forget sometimes, but Ken Shamrock is just exploding with muscles. This man is gigantic.
And I think a lot of people forget that the company had big plans for him at various points. Like he had the look that they loved, which to your point was, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say he was on some stuff, but he was on something to get that big, like maybe just, just typical, protein, right? But he had the look and the company was behind him in a huge way during this time. So you forget that sometimes when you think about the Attitude Era.
I think that he was high on life. I think that he was just full on living, and that's what made him so big. I don't know.
This dude was an athlete. I mean, UFC fighter, a true blue athlete.
Oh, dude, won the first ever UFC tournament. He's badass. Absolutely. So anyway, Ken comes to the ring. He hits himself in the head. Liz was very confused by that. Why is he attacking himself? She also noted she wanted Goldust robe, which I have the Ric Flair robe that I got at Toys R Us. I don't know why they don't release a cheaper version of that Goldust robe. There's money to be made there.
Sure, that you could put the robe and the wig together. That would be a great duo, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure they want to be in the Dustin Rhodes business right now. And my favorite Liz observation, I think the last one I have here, because then I think she left the room. But Goldust came out to his theme song and she said that this is the kind of music you hear when you're visiting a new land in Final Fantasy.
Stop it.
And I feel like that's so specific, right?
Stop it. No, this is iconic. This is movie magic music. Listen, I mean, you think back in 1998, we have Dustin Reynolds as Goldust wrestling in this match maybe not anything to write home about, but a high level competitor. And here we are in 2020, a high level competitor still. This dude is a freak of an athlete. Talk about Ken Shamrock all we want to, but Dustin, man, Goldust was a big deal. And I think people also, they talk about him, they think about later stages Goldust, but during this time, people thought he was something special because he was so mysterious. He had this persona, the slowed down entrance that you saw where it was like it wasn't the normal 30 frames per second. It was like 15 and it kind of it made everything feel very different.
Yeah. Well, then we went back. Okay. So back in the ring, the crowd, this was the first time I'd noticed, kind of felt a little dead, right?
Yes.
They kind of started to burn out at this match. Everything's moving real quickly. The McMahon stuff, it's already kind of, you get what's going on here. But they did get into it when Goldust went to hit what I think is called the Golden Globes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that with the crotch kick in the corner?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about that. Everybody enjoys watching a man get kicked in the balls. But Jimmy Cordero stopped it. And then out of nowhere, Ken pulled off this really good Hurricane Rana before locking in the ankle lock, kind of floated. No, wait, that would be in the Rock match. But then he locked in the ankle lock for the win. And Ken just looked really good here. I was impressed. Real short bout, but I thought this was a good way to, get Ken some momentum in the tournament. Not a lot to write home here.
Hurricane Rana, man, he just nailed that thing. It just looked beautiful. And the way they did the roll up, I mean, they used to have some really creative finishes when it came to, nowadays people hit a finisher, they hit a pin, right? But they used to do a lot more with roll ups. You mentioned Mick Foley earlier. They just felt a little bit more kind of unexpected when you'd hit something like that.
Go watch Mick roll up Duane Gill on that opening bout. Just a floating cradle roll. It's just beautiful. This brings us to The Rock versus Triple H. Now, The Rock is exploding right now, becoming The Rock. He's getting a huge reaction. Then comes out Gerald Briscoe, Pat Patterson to the DX entrance music, telling everyone to suck it. Hilarious. Gerald then says Triple H is not there tonight, and he keeps saying Mr. McMahon.
Mr. McMahon.
Mr. McMahon over and over again. Mr. McMahon is not happy, and he said that Triple H was sent tickets to the show weeks ago, but decided not to show up. He also said Vince told him he also said Mr. McMahon told him he could find Triple H if he wanted to. Go back. I'm sorry, Gerald Briscoe. Go check out the interview. We just dropped an interview with him. Go check it out. Anyway,
I just thought to myself during all this stuff, how did Vince McMahon let this, Vince McMahon is so particular about not liking Southern wrestling. How did he let this dude, he's hilarious. I love it. Gerald Briscoe.
Gerald Briscoe's fantastic in this role. So then Jim Ross noted on commentary that Triple H had just had knee surgery. And this is the only Observer, this is the only copy paste I did from the Observer, just as a note of some backstage insight into this particular show. But the Observer was saying that I'm going to read it as it was written from the, whatever, I guess, Wednesday or Thursday after Survivor Series. So there is a behind-the-scenes mindset in the WWF right now regarding Triple H that he may have gotten as far as he can as far as moving up the ladder and doesn't have the working ability and attitude to pass those higher on the ladder. There is a feeling the guys on top, such as Austin and Undertaker, would have been back for Survivor Series, for instance, with the same knee injury, and even that X-Pac, who is limited somewhat by size but is the best worker in the ring in the company, may have already surpassed Triple H as a single star in the DX group, even though Triple H is both bigger in a promotion where that usually matters a lot and a stronger interview. However, it's doubtful Triple H would leave WWF based not only on comments he's made, but because friends of his in WCW who are making huge money, Nash and Hall, far more than he'll likely be offered in WCW if WCW sends him an offer, are always claiming to be miserable and wanting to get out when their contracts are up. Okay. So that's a peek into this period here. Triple H, of course, would go on to become Triple H, who's like running the show largely outside of Vince's decisions. And of course, went on to have many, many classic matches and title reigns and everything. At this point in 98, Meltzer was reporting, not very well, not seen as a top guy, Wonder what changed. Wonder what changed the next year or so.
That's right. What did he get? No, it's crazy to look back at this and think about what could have been, right? Because this show without Triple H, and Triple H had a couple of good feuds leading into this, but this show without Triple H is still stocked full of talent. And you can tell all of those guys, it's a very different atmosphere than it is today. They want to get to the top, even if it means we got to cut people all around us to get there. Like, it's not just, we can all succeed together, but the Rock and Stone Cold, their rivalry is really a personal thing because they both want to be the top guy, right?
Yeah. Well, then Pat Patterson took the microphone. He said that there's going to be no forfeit and Triple H is going to be replaced by the Big Bossman. He's back. He was eliminated earlier, but he's going to get another shot in the tournament after getting DQ'd against Austin. Rock quickly pulls Bossman into this inside cradle for a win. Crowd goes crazy. Biggest reaction I put so far on the show. And things roll along there. Bossman loses 2 in the opening contest. And, Rock's got a lot of action ahead of him the rest of the night. I think this is probably a good. But again, man, just like boom, 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 boom. There's not a lot of meat to any of these matches thus far.
4 seconds is the official count on that. Jim Ross calls it the shortest match in WWF history at that point. So a little tidbit for you guys.
Then we get to match number 7, hotly anticipated Undertaker with Pallbearer taking on Kane. This is the first semifinal match, so we've cleared all the opening round contests. These men were both given byes in the opening round. Jim Ross noted that it was a year ago in the same building that Kane debuted. I thought that was a pretty cool fact. Again, Jim Ross doing great work. The two brawl back and forth the first several minutes. The way Taker moves has the ref intimidated, which I thought was really cool. Like, at several points during this, the Undertaker, moves in a way where the ref's like, all right, dude, whatever, Yeah. You don't see anybody get that kind of, not even like The Fiend, I feel like, really gets that reaction. Midway through the bout, Undertaker's blows stop affecting Kane, who turns around, hits a really kind of not my favorite top rope lariat onto Undertaker. That just kind of looked like they fell apart there. Then they both get up. They go for the choke slam, but Kane waves it off. He hits his choke slam. Then Pallbearer pops up for the distraction. Kane goes after him, and then he turns around. Undertaker hits that tombstone. Bear grabs Kane's leg without the ref seeing it to assist with the pin. And then after Undertaker and Pallbearer are leaving, they're showing this match graphic, and I just hear Jerry Lawler say, "Oh, and Kane just took out the ref." Didn't see it, but I imagine it happened. This was real brief. In the Observer report that I read, this was the least liked match of the show, I think, because maybe considering who was in it, there was more expectation there. But not a whole lot to write home with, with these two.
And these guys have fought a lot in the recent year. Like, we've seen them at WrestleMania when they first matched up. We've seen them in championship matches. I think we're kind of getting a little tired of the storyline, but I want to call out here the Pallbearer aspect, which makes it something different. This card has so many different characters on it, and even the managers play a crucial role in that. Pallbearer was on the side of Kane, and then he betrayed Kane recently to join the Undertaker. And those extra elements of storytelling, while the match and the wrestling not that great, they keep you engaged as a viewer and allow you, even in short matches, to get something interesting out of it. No wasted, maybe wasted wrestling, but no wasted segment.
And it was interesting too to me watching Undertaker and Paul play heel here, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's tough, right, with a character that was so popular to do that. But and the thing that they did that I thought was so interesting, it wasn't anything supernatural. It's just Pallbearer, William Moody, just doing cheap manager stuff. You know?
Sure, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
Just pop-up distractions. There's some other stuff here in the show that we'll get to as well. But like, you don't see managers do this stuff anymore. Yeah, I mean, like maybe every once in a blue moon, but there's several points in here where he just pulls out some old school manager spots and gets some heat, and I'm like, all right, cool,
Well, just the aspect of a manager gets up on the ring apron to distract the ref during a count is not something they play into very much anymore. The referee gets fully distracted, the count happens, the audience is pissed, right? Little touches like that, just they tell the audience and they sell the audience on a certain kind of character or story.
That brings us then to match number 8. Hardcore champion, Corporate Mankind. He's back. Al Snow is his opponent. Good friend here. They love roller coaster riding together. Al's got Head, but Head has Sacco wrapped around his head. That's weird. So Mick is still wearing the tuxedo to impress Mr. McMahon. Al gets outside the ring, grabs a chair early in the match. And Mick went and grabbed a chair early in the match. And then Al gets it. He hits Mick in the guts a few times right in front of the ref. This is the first time I started thinking to myself, what is happening, man? This is the first of many, many times throughout the show that blatant cheatery happens in front of the referee. I was texting everybody this morning. I was like, Jimmy Corderas, referee of this match. Jimmy, what's going on here? They just tell you guys not to call any of those DQs or anything? And he said Jimmy's a very nice man. He'll be on the show. I think he's last week. I forget the timeline. We're recording this right now. But like, Jimmy was very much like, he was like, we didn't get told not to call things, but the idea was that we were trying to allow everybody to be edgier. So there's kind of this like fluid creative process they were trying to figure out, I guess, at that time with the referees,
And as a viewer, you just took, like, people would do run-ins. People, like, it felt like a time where it really was the Wild Wild West when it came to match rules and match back and forth and whatever else, because they just acted out and did what they wanted to. But as a viewer, you are hooked on it. You're like, let me see another one of those chair shots, or let me see another run-in. It plays very different in 2020.
So then Al then attempted to do a leapfrog off the barricade, which looked nice. I mean, Al's moving here. I was very impressed. Mick then, as he's leapfrogging off the barricade, punched him in the throat, which looked brutal. Mick then dropped Al face first onto the chair, again in front of Jimmy, who doesn't DQ him. Vince is shown backstage laughing because Gerald Briscoe's saying, man, Mr. McMahon, look, I took that Mr. Sacco, I wrapped it around Al Snow's head, and oh my God. And Vince is like, can you imagine what's going to happen? Mick's going to freak out when he sees that goddamn sock wrapped around him. Mr. McMahon, I know that's why I did it. Anyway.
The corporate scheming is great. I love it. It's exactly what it needed to be during this time.
So Mick does eventually see Sacco wrapped around the head. He takes it. He attacks it. Well, before attacking Al, he attacks Head. He's like upset with Head for taking the sock, which is hilarious. Al then took advantage. The two fight on with Sacco in Mick's hand. Mick then hit a double arm DDT. He put Sacco on, applied it to Al, who passed out. Now it's going to be Mick versus Steve Austin in the semifinals. Honestly, like, this was my favorite match of the show so far. Just a lot of fun stuff going on here.
There was an element of Sacco, element of Head, an element of, in fact, Sacco's kind of coming into its own as a thing during this period too. And I think it makes all of this a little bit more fun, but you called it out here too. People forget Al Snow. I think people know him, and they know Head, and you follow the business, you know him from Impact and everything else, but he's a good worker. And you see that both of these guys get known for other things, but they get to showcase some of that work ethic in here. And I dig that.
That takes us to match number 9, Ken Shamrock versus The Rock. Now, Ken's eyes on the way to the ring here. I don't know what happened between the last appearance and this one, but I just wrote his eyes literally look like they want to escape his body as he walks to the ring. Jim Ross noted that The Rock only debuted 2 years earlier in Survivor Series. More great context here. And again, like, it helps me watching this back get a little context of where Rock was here. Lawler noted that the crowd is chanting Shamrock sucks when not long ago they were chanting Rocky sucks, which I think is a very accurate idea of exactly where Rock was at this time, right? So midway through the bout, Bossman, he's back. He comes to ringside.
No, not Big Bossman.
If he's getting paid per appearance, he walked out with a mint on this show. So anyway, Bossman comes to ringside. Lawler says McMahon sent him to take out The Rock, who he doesn't want to have the title. Lawler said McMahon hates the people now, and The Rock is the people's champion. Blunt about your boss. Crowd is chanting, Bossman sucks. And so after some grappling on the mat, Shamrock beautifully transitions into this ankle lock on Rock before Rock gets to the ropes for a huge pop. This is when I'm really starting to get in. I think that something went off with Rock and Shamrock here, where they realized they were getting the fans. They were into it, because yes. I noticed at this point they upped the intensity. Right after this, you saw Rock and Shamrock hit this double down clothesline spot, which we've all probably seen 1,000 times. But the way these two just threw each other at themselves and kicked their feet up, very high intensity. Rock was taunting Bossman, who popped up on the apron, and the ref is distracted. So Rock then kicked Shamrock in the balls, big pop. Rock hit, everybody cheats during this, by the way. Nobody's innocent here. Rock hit the people's elbow. Shamrock kicked out, big reaction. Rock went for the rock bottom. Shamrock then countered to the belly to belly, and Bossman hopped up on the apron again. While the ref was distracted, he tossed Shamrock the nightstick, but Rock out of nowhere, thump, like a GD Jedi, grabs this thing, levels Shamrock with it, and then picks up the win and throws he both caught this thing midair, right? Like, which looked ridiculous and could have very easily gone wrong. But then he threw it in a way where it missed, I think it was Kyoto was the ref. It missed his head by like maybe 3 inches. Like, what a spot that was.
Yeah, I think it was beautiful. If you watch this, I mean, it is perfectly timed. The way he grabs it, the way he uses it, you wonder if did they practice it that way, or did it just happen to work out? I don't know. But it was a perfect spot. And this match might have been my favorite on the card, just from the way they built back to where they got to it with. You do see halfway through the card, or halfway through the match, there is a spot where Shamrock and The Rock, you can very clearly see them kind of talking as they rise back up, and that's where it kind of picks up the intensity. So I love this kind of calling it on the flies piece, and shades of The Rock in here doing some stuff that will pay dividends later on when we get where we're going with the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree, man. I definitely noticed there was I think it may have been around the same time. Like, they just kicked it up. They took it to that third gear. Nance Warner, anyway. Second gear crew. Anyway, that threw us backstage to a backstage segment. Michael Cole was interviewing Pallbearer. There were these very brief inserts that only were probably like 3 sentences. Bearer said that the only rock the Undertaker likes is cold, hard granite to make his tombstones with.
Great line. Fantastic line.
Perfect. Then we get our first non-tournament match of the night. This is the 10th match of the card. They are just getting dizzy now, Mania level numbers of matches. Sable took on WWE Women's Champion Jacqueline with Mark Marrow. Now, as Sable's coming to the ring, men are whistling. There's not a whole lot of cheering. Jim Ross notes that Lawler has, quote, levitated out of his seat, looking at Sable. Not really like the women's revolution reaction we're getting for women right now with Sable came to the ring, right?
No, yeah, not. I mean, this is a very different era, and it feels kind of slimy going back and watching it now. And I just want to say, like, this entire match, like Sable wrestling in this match, this is not about. You can do a lot with a variety of different kinds of physiques or builds, but when I see her looking back on this now, I just don't take her as a serious threat in an athletic competition. Like, she just doesn't have that look. Jacqueline does. Jacqueline was she was ready for action. Like, she is she's an athlete through and through, but it really does undermine the credibility of it whenever your main star here doesn't look like a serious competitor.
So then they threw to the ring where Shane McMahon is the referee for this match, which kind of caught me off guard. And to be fair, I didn't read a whole lot of spoilers about this. I hadn't watched this in 20 years. So, like, some of the things that happen on the show genuinely surprised me. So with that in mind, I think this is a wonderful way to establish Shane as just young upstart getting a shot as a referee for Dad's company.
Sure.
Right? Jacqueline,
after he had pissed off his dad by rehiring Stone Cold Steve Austin. So the layers are still there, still tying together here, reminding the audience, if you've never watched this, you didn't know, right? And this kind of reminds you what it is. But everybody else, remember, guys, Shane is a referee, and that's what he does. It's cool.
Earn his way back in here. So
Yes.
Jacqueline attacks Sable on Heat. We went over that. She has some of Sable's hair weaved into her braid, which made me think, like, how long until Bianca Belair does that?
Mm,
She just like takes somebody's hair and weaves it into her braid. That'd be a kind of cool thing for her to do.
there you go.
Mark Marrow taunted Sable from the apron. Jacqueline attacked her from behind to start the match. Jim Ross noted that Jacqueline broke into the business wrestling men. Again, just more stuff where it's like Jim and Jerry were working overtime here on this show, really providing backstory, I thought, for everybody. Everybody looked good, I thought, on commentary. Sable quickly hits the TKO, only for Marrow to pull her outside of the ring before the 3 count. Sable then kicked Marrow in the balls. Another ball shot. People love ball shots in 98.
And the fans ate it up.
Punches left and right. Then Sable hit the Sable bomb on him outside. Jacqueline went for the tornado DDT, got thrown off by Sable. She hit the Sable bomb for the win, and they cut to the only 3 women who were standing together in the entire audience, and they seemed very happy that she had won. But it was noticeable. Sea of men, like, yeah! And then there were like 3 women, they were kind of like, okay, yeah, okay. Anyway.
Notably, everybody associates Sable with the Attitude Era. Her first championship win for the women's championship here, and it kind of establishes her where people think of her as being kind of top of that heap. But nothing much this match. A lot of stuff, Attitude Era, God bless it. They do a lot of things, mix a lot of characters together. That really was an era that lived on. Here are the people that we have, and we're just going to do crazy mixed up shit with them. Mark Marrow, Sable, Jacqueline, all that together. It's just a weird dynamic when you look back on it now. But in the moment, it was just like, I don't know what's going to happen next, and that's what hooked you as a viewer.
All right, that brings us to match number 11. Hardcore champion, Corporate Mankind is back. He is now taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin exploded with punches from the start of the bout, stripping off Mick's tuxedo jacket, which would be the beginning of the slow devolution of Mick's tuxedo outfit throughout the night, which was its own kind of little plot device, Sure. Anyway.
It was, and it kind of represented a little bit more than that. And also, it just looked awkward. I mean, Mick did great with it, but he just looked awkward to wrestle in. So I was just happy for him that he could transition back to more of his normal attire, which this time was the brown tights and the brown top. So
then Vince McMahon, he gets rolled out to ringside by Patterson and Briscoe. After turning things around, Mick picks up one of his shoes and he starts attacking Austin with it. Again, no DQ called here in this match. Is
a shoe considered a foreign object?
I don't know, man. I was watching SmackDown back this morning, and it was the spot where Carmella shoved. No, wait, that was after the match. The DQ had already happened. So never mind. Yeah, this should be a DQ. 100%. Several things.
Part of the match. The shoe was already in the match, right?
Yes. All right. The two. Is it like a belt? Sometimes a belt's okay. Sometimes it's not.
Right. If you're whipping somebody with it, it's fine. But if you didn't wear that belt coming out, it is considered a foreign object.
Yeah, I'm going to Court airs about this. We're going to have a hell of a chat here. Probably already aired.
Is it in the rule book?
Yeah, right.
That's what I want to know.
So the two brawl up the entrance ramp and around ringside before Mick takes Austin back to the ring. I call him Mankind. He grabbed a chair from ringside, goes to attack Austin. Austin kicks it into Mick's face. No DQ. Austin turns around into a double arm DDT into the chair. Again, no DQ. Jim Ross notes at this point that the referee is showing a lot of latitude here. So at this point, Jim is also kind of thinking, I guess, what I'm thinking watching this. Austin backdropped Mick onto the chair before hitting a stunner on the chair, which was like, yeah, I guess it's supposed to be more impressive when you hit a stunner on a chair, but is it when, like, you are bumping into the chair and nothing else changes about the move?
It's like those video games sometimes, right? Wherever, like, you would press a button and you'd have the weapon in your hand, and it actually looks like it does more damage to you to do, like, a code breaker off the top of the ladder, but the opponent is hurt more, right? It doesn't really make much sense, but the rules of the Attitude Era were that there were no rules. So as long as the wrestler sold it and the announce team sold it, it hurt worse.
Okay. So anyway, after this busting steel chair stunner, the Stooges pulled the referee before he could count the 3. Then Vince joined in kicking the referee. What a time. Mick then hit the mandible claw before a low blow from Austin into a stunner. There's no referee, of course, because Vince just kicked him, beat him up with the Stooges. So Shane McMahon, he hits the ring as the referee to count the 3, but he stops before the 3 count. He gives him the finger. He infuriates Austin. Briscoe and Slaughter hit the ring with a chair and hit Austin in the head. Then Shane hits the ring, gives Mick the pinfall victory, flipping off Austin again. Vince and his merry men, as Jerry Lawler said, skip gaily away towards the backstage area. Vince ran to a limo waiting for him in the back. Austin followed. Vince left in the limo. Austin found a man waiting in the parking garage. Like, I'm guessing, I don't, smartphones didn't exist, so I guess, I don't know, maybe reading a book or something in his car. He threw this man out of his own SUV. He stole the car. He took off after McMahon. And after the match, of course, Jim Ross was explaining how Shane had just signed Austin to a 5-year deal. So why would he screw Steve Austin over? So again, like, you know, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite Austin McFoley match by a long shot, but the progression was there. This was a very storytelling heavy show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see things happen in this match. They're gonna, number one, Austin losing this match basically means for the first time in almost a year, he's going to be kept away from the WWF title picture until next year's Wrestle for months. And what that does is it's going to create space for guys like The Rock, Mick Foley, others, right? Paul White's going to join the organization in early 1999. All these other guys join in, and they can kind of take that next step up because Austin's not occupying all of the oxygen up there, right? Triple H is going to start rising up the card. So this loss for Austin is the first time since he was in the Royal Rumble early in the year that he is firmly now out of the title picture, right?
Yeah.
But also, Shane McMahon gets brought in here. This turn is what makes him and his father the leaders of the corporation and the corporate ministry the next year, right? This is Shane's McMahon coming out into his own as a character and really showing who he aligns with. So I love it. I love all these things. And again, Mick Foley, the story of the night, the chosen champion by Vince, not the champion he wants, but the champion that he needs, right?
Yeah, it's a psycho that he can just manipulate.
That's right.
His own personal need. So then we get to the 12th match of the show. Undertaker with Pallbearer versus The Rock. Early on, Undertaker falls down, does a signature sit-up, and Rock just punches him in the back of the head. I just never seen that. I had to note that. It was like, why don't more people just do that? This man is just sitting there. At one point, Undertaker distracted the ref with intimidation like he did earlier, and Bearer hit Rock in the head with his shoe twice. A lot of shoe action in this show. Then Big Bossman's back. Ringside, the Bossman's back. Rock hit a DDT on Taker and Mock doing a sit-up. I thought it was a fun little bit. Refs distracted. Rock hit Taker in the balls. Loves it. Again, ball shots. They never get boring, I guess, in 98. Rock went for the people's elbow. Bossman distracted him by grabbing his leg. Taker sat up. Kane interfered. He chokeslammed Rock to give Rock a DQ victory, screwing over his brother, The Undertaker, continuing that feud, setting up Mick Foley or Corporate Mankind versus The Rock in the finals. And post-match, Kane and Undertaker began to brawl around ringside and into the crowd. So, you know, again, this wasn't like my favorite Undertaker-Rock match, but it was more about what was happening coming out of the match and the story, spinning Undertaker Kane off onto the next thing while at the same time allowing The Rock to get this big victory, right?
Every match has a purpose on this card. Every segment has a purpose. It is a purpose-driven show. And we get these sometimes Friday nights, Raws, whatever they are, right? But there is a thread here, and every character is kind of doing something that keeps you engaged. Oh, yeah, there's this rivalry happening. How many characters in modern WWE actually have ongoing storylines that you can weave in and out of other storylines? It doesn't happen. It feels very regimented and segmented in modern wrestling booking.
Well,
so I love this.
The only exception I'd say right now is Sasha Bailey, man. I feel like those two are in a
Sure.
right now where you can go back, you can tag them, split them up. I mean, I don't think fans would ever get bored of those two, you know?
Absolutely. And it's not a universal rule, right? But you look at all these different pieces on this card and how you're able to bring back in a feud that's been happening for a year and how it plays off another story happening with The Rock. I love so much about all the elements they had in place here and what it allows you to do from a booking and creative standpoint.
This brings us to another backstage segment with a very young Michael Cole, baby Michael Cole, talking to Corporate Mankind. Baby Michael Cole has one more rock. Mankind tells Baby Michael Cole that he has one more rock to climb if you smell what the sock is cooking. Just these little 30-second. Here's the thing. Why does every backstage WWE cutaway have to be 90 seconds to 2 minutes? You know,
because it was written by writers back then. They just did it themselves. They just came off the cuff and said what they thought.
Yeah, can't you? I mean, is it going to kill you to do a 20-second backstage cutaway with a good one-liner coming out of it? Because they did it twice here with him and Pallbearer, and then both times I was like, that's all I needed from this, you know?
When you layer creative people on top of creative people on top of creative people, everybody's got to have their input. Back then, the creative person was The Rock and possibly the booking committee, but it didn't need 15 writers to do this, right?
I was waiting for after Mick finished cutting this fantastic promo for the Street Profits to walk in, get interrupted by the Viking Raiders, and out of nowhere, R-Truth's trying to win the 24/7 title back. I mean, Jesus. Anyway, then came what was voted, I believe, by the Observer, the worst match of this entire show. Hard to argue. Match number 13. WWE Tag Team Champions, the New Age Outlaws versus the Headbangers versus D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry. I noted that there was a group of fans when the Outlaws came out that had taken printing paper back when it was like hard to print in large quantities, but it was like 5 rows deep. It was like 30 seats long. This massive sign that wrote out every word from the Road Dogg's iconic New Age Outlaws entrance. It was, I mean, can you imagine, like, what if you don't want to be a part of it? What if they're like, hey, dude, we're all going to do this. And you're like, this obstructs my view. I don't want to hold this thing up. I don't know.
Maybe they're all, but like back then you went to wrestling and you would buy out an entire section and you and all of your friends would go together. Maybe they're all in the same, the same friend group.
You're right. Maybe it could be a fraternity house, and they're like, this is what we do. This will get us laid. Yeah.
There were a lot of frat bros in the audience at WWF events back then, huh? I noticed that rewatching some of this stuff. Like, I'm like, you're in a frat. You were in a frat. You're going to be in a frat.
Yes. The fraternity of 98 WWE fans. So anyway, Billy Gunn lovingly dedicated the Suck It to Triple H and China before the match. What a nice gesture that was to the two of them. Video shown from the pre-show heat where the Headbangers were attacked by the Outlaws before D'Lo and Mark Henry got involved in this little backstage segment. So that set this thing up. JR noted that Mark Henry's biggest accomplishments are his Olympics appearance and a sexual harassment lawsuit he filed against China. What?
Yeah. There is some storytelling that would not be kosher today. I mean, it might not have been back then, but it was the 90s and let things slide. But there was a whole thing with China and Mark Henry that just does not play well looking back at it.
Bleep that, right? Come on, man.
Yeah, leave me my assholes and bleep.
Can you imagine if they did something ridiculous, like get Matt Riddle involved in a sexual harassment storyline? I mean, it's just, you don't do these things, right?
That's right.
So anyway, where was I on my list? Jim Ross noted that the Outlaw Rule is in effect, so partners cannot pin partners, which I believe was something the Outlaws had done on Raw like a month or a couple months before, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In a multi-man match. So Mosh is wearing a Maryland...
Because they had done that to keep their championship, and it was a little kind of FU to the man, but yeah.
Correct, yeah. So Mosh is wearing a Marilyn Manson shirt I noted that looked a lot like Sting. I had to look at it for a second. I'd be like, why is he wearing the Sting shirt? D'Lo, now here's where this, I don't want to say the S word, but this is where this all breaks down, and in a confusing way that I don't like. D'Lo does a blind tag behind the ref's back to break up a pin, but the ref didn't see it. And then D'Lo's like, I got tagged in. And the ref looks at him like, what are you doing? Every team gets to have one legal person in this match because Jim Ross explained that each team is allowed to have a legal team in the match or a legal man in the ring. So it's not like 2 men in the ring, and if one tag team's not tagged in, they have to get tagged in. Every team is allotted 1 man in the ring, but that rule is not really followed this whole match, right?
Right.
Sometimes it seems
it's 2 people, sometimes, yes.
3. And Jim Ross again saying that the officiating has been a little liberal here tonight.
Right.
Sure, Jimmy loves. The commentators joke about how D'Lo has his chest protector on still, though he's likely healed from his chest injury. After getting beat down the whole bout, Billy finally gets his hot tag. He comes in, the crowd goes nuts. While no one's looking, not even the camera guy, Gunn hits Thrasher with a pile driver. Totally missed. They totally missed this shot. You kind of saw like the very end of it. And a pile driver, for God's sake. Pins him. Post-match, Gunn untied his trunks and moons their opponent. Wow, man. This is a train wreck. This was 2 train wrecks. Train wrecking into each other. A mega train wreck.
Yeah, I think the less said about this match, the better. You kind of get what you get from it. I'm always surprised that they didn't do more with the Headbangers. And I think the Headbangers are one of those teams that felt like, hey, they've got something here they never fully capitalized on. So I just always think it's a missed aspect of the Attitude Era.
You're still working indies. That's an attainable gift from me, man. I should get the Headbangers. I got Matt Taven and Mike Bennett just ran today. They're harder, I would think a harder get than the Headbangers. Could be wrong.
I'm telling you what.
All right, last match of the night. And also my longest list of notes because it's like a match in like 5 seconds.
That's right.
Hardcore champion, corporate mankind versus The Rock, the main event. If you like storytelling over in-ring action, this is your goddamn Shakespeare, okay? Now, Mick is wearing, he notes, actual wrestling boots for this match. So he's not wearing dress shoes anymore. He's taking this seriously. This is for the title. Jim Ross notes that Mick's brain is scrambled from chair shots. A line
that line has aged terribly.
It doesn't even age over a year. It ages like 5 minutes later. I'm upset that he said it. Now, The Rock and Mankind, of course, just a couple months earlier faced off in that hellacious I Quit match at SummerSlam, where Rock just scrambled Mick's brains, right? We're only like, when was that? That could only be
that's later on. That's after this. This is because at SummerSlam it was The Rock and Triple H.
Oh, when was the I Quit match then?
The I Quit match would be later on at Royal Rumble, which is the one that they feature on. So this is the first time these two have kind of crossed paths in this way. And it makes it doubly bad when you know where this goes, because yes, they do end up squaring off. We'll talk about the future here in a minute, but it gets worse when you know what happens later.
Man, I tried to do so much research for this and I totally botched that. All right, that makes sense though. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, so Rock Mankind, it happens after. So backstage, Vince is shown telling Bossman to be on alert for Steve Austin. So, of course, the McMahons, after peeling out earlier, they're back. They're in the building. Bossman takes off with his tactical bag, I'm guessing to set traps. I'm not really sure. Jim Ross notes that right after the show, WWE is going to be live on the Home Shopping Network, and Jerry Lawler notes that the new champ is likely to be on there as well. Man.
It was a weird time, but, dude, I checked into those every time after a pay-per-view. Watched them all.
I'm surprised they still don't do it, right?
Home Shopping Network's still a thing, right? Dude,
they make bucos of bucks, man. They make a lot of money. I don't know why there's not a WWE program on that. Why that discontinued. Anyway, so then Vince and Shane in a ref shirt, they make their way to ringside. Jim Ross calls these two Big John Wayne and Little John Wayne based on their swaggers. And yeah, Shane was channeling his dad a lot more than he would after this. Yes. I don't know that I've ever seen Shane try to be his dad, because then he kind of became his own man a little bit, but definitely trying to be his dad here. Mankind hit Rock with a chair in front of the ref, and it's at this point that Jim Ross noted that the referee, Earl Hebner, was told by the McMahons, just don't count any DQs or countouts. Like, and that's fine, but I would imagine if you were a fan live in attendance and didn't hear this, I mean, A, you don't care, or B, you're confused, right? Sure. You know, this was not made obvious to them. Then we see Rock blast Mick Foley with the steps, use the chair as a ball bat, and then as Mick is getting up, he just rocks him with this brutal, unprotected headshot. And I'm partially feeling better that this happened before the infamous I Quit match, and I got my timelines wrong, because I watched this thing, man, and I just all I'm seeing in my head is beyond the mat.
But they all add up, though. Like earlier, later, it's not a good thing, especially, they all end up adding up later in life. Dude, God bless Mick Foley.
Rough. So after that, Rock blasted Mick with this. Okay, yeah. Mick then gets up after like kind of taking a moment in the corner, and he gets Rock back on the outside. He hits the cactus elbow drop. Always looks good. And I think messed up his hip. I think that's what he credits it for. Jim Ross really, and this is the point that I thought was really interesting, because Mick is like got a sleeper on Rock, and Jim Ross is just really selling Mick's journey from being this kid in the backyard to going to Madison Square Garden. Now he's in the and like this guy's the heel, right? And like, I don't know that you would get a hard sell like this for a heel now on WWE TV. I guess,
but he's been posited as the lovable heel. What made this so cool was, he was in Vince McMahon or McMahon's corner, right? But he was this kind of character that you kind of love. You're like, oh shuck, he's just being manipulated, but he doesn't know any better, right? Like he was still very earnest, and so I think it made it. He was shades of gray, and as a fan, you gravitated towards him because of how earnest he was, but also because the announcers did put that over so well. You just connected with him, even though he was on the side of evil. It was unintentional, right?
It'll help here just a little bit too at the end of the match. So Mick then went to hit an elbow drop on the Rock on the outside from the second rope to the outside. He then ate it, went right through the Spanish announce table. That thing blew up. Awesome looking spot. After a double arm DDT, Mick put Sacco on. He tried to put the Rock down. The crowd's going nuts, cheering on the Rock, who powered on. He pulled Sacco out of his mouth. He then hit the rock bottom. He locked in the sharpshooter on Mick. He was near the ropes. I was thinking to myself, he's too close to the ropes. Vince then calls for the bell, a la the Montreal Screwjob. Rock embraces the McMahons and both Shane and Vince in the ring. They give him the belt. Vince took the mic. He says that the people screwed the people tonight. He says the people are as pathetic and as gullible as mankind. He teases more on Raw tomorrow night. Great hook. That's why they probably did 5-6. Vince said that The Rock totally loathes the people. He said Shane put on an Academy Award-winning performance. Shane then took the microphone. He said he's just like his dad after all. Then he wooed like Ric Flair, which I just wrote question mark.
It's weird. Weird.
So then Rock took the mic. He said that everybody there's trailer park trash that can kiss his ass. Mick then told Dad, which is what he called Vince, that he didn't pin or submit, so he doesn't know why this is happening. He doesn't know what's going on. Vince then has The Rock attack Mick, ultimately hitting this rock bottom. He then put the title around Rock's waist. Shane presents the corporate champion, The Rock, where he gets that moniker. And now Steve Austin's back. He hits the ring. He attacks The Rock while the McMahons, they powder out of the ring. Rock and Austin, they're going back and forth before Austin. He hits this stunner. He throws Rock out of the ring. He picks up the title. He throws it at Rock. Austin then picks up Mick. He gives Mick the stunner. Everybody's going nuts. The music hits. I did note here, I saw George Napolitano, famed Pro Wrestling Magazine journalist, a photographer down in the lower corner.
Yes.
Rolling his film as he's just taking these wonderful action shots. But then, yeah, Austin walked up the entranceway. He gave the finger to the crowd. That's nuts. And that's Deadly Games, 1998, man. And I think you're absolutely right here. If you're looking for in-ring action, don't watch this show. Not a very good show in-ring-wise. Storytelling-wise, though, this was very pivotal. And I absolutely see where you can say within the context of everything, this is a very important show.
Yeah, man. We talked about how this sets up The Rock versus Mick Foley for the championship in the coming months, right? And concluding later on next year with the I Quit match that's very infamous. And eventually the Rock and Sock connection. And This Is Your Life segment that happens in the next year, which is the highest rated segment of all time in WWE history. All that came from starting right here with these two fighting, right? Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon will carry them into the next year as Austin pivots away from the main event picture with the WWF Championship. But also we get The Rock and Stone Cold going at it, kind of riffing on what they did before with the IC title, but prefacing WrestleMania and what's going to happen next March where The Rock and Austin fight for the title. So again, just so much storytelling. That heel turn for The Rock, so infamous because he was at the peak of his popularity. Something I can't imagine would happen in today's WWF, where you take a guy right there at the top and just say, let's twist him around and make him evil when he's selling all this merch. But I love it. And I think it speaks to, in my mind, what the Attitude Era is all about.
Absolutely, and that brings us to the end of our first holiday gift to everybody there. That was Survivor Series Deadly Games 98. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be chatting with Second City's EJ Cameron on the eve of Christmas Eve, December 23rd, and we are going to be going back to No Way Out 2006, the main event, Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker. You're also going to get Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Chris Benoit and Booker T, Matt Hardy and Tatanka versus Eminem, JBL versus Bobby Lashley, Gregory Helms versus Brian Kendrick, Funaki, Kid Cash, Nunzio, Paul London, Psychosis, Scotty Too Hottie, and Super Crazy. Wow. And of course, the Boogeyman will take on Simon Dean. So come on back here tomorrow for No Way Out 2006. And of course, all of these reviews are available over on our social media platforms, YouTube. That's at Wrestling Inc. on Twitter, Wrestling Inc. Instagram, Facebook, and then the YouTube channel there. You can see this. You can see all of our interviews. And, of course, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, weekends after pay-per-views, we go live with the Wrestling Inc. Daily. We pull that audio. We put it on the RSS. Or we go live with the Wrestling Inc. podcast. We pull that audio. We put it on the RSS feed for the Wrestling Inc. podcast. If you want to listen to shows that way, go subscribe over on iTunes just like you would the Daily. And I enjoyed this, Michael. Happy holidays here, man. Thank you for picking something I really enjoyed and for getting to walk down memory lane with you, man. This was a blast.
Dude, I love it. Thank you for indulging me with one of the kind of the weirder choices of the week, I think. But I'm glad that we got to talk about this. I really love the storytelling of it. And I hope fans check out this card, but also this era, because it's a very special era to me personally. And I think y'all will appreciate it. And happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, and Michael, where do you want to send the people to find you, follow you, support you, and all those great things?
I mean, if you're listening to this, you already listen to the Wrestling Inc. Daily every Monday, I assume. But check us back out here every Monday, every day of the week with all of your great co-hosts, Nick. And if me personally, follow me on Twitter. I'm at The Real Wiseman. Would love to talk more about this show or any show on Twitter.
All right, and I'm at House Rebel, HAUS Rebel over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.